has trouble with the snap, and the ball is free. It's picked up by Michigan State's Jalen Watts Jackson, and he scores on the last play of the game. Unbelievable.
35, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50, 45. There goes Davis.
Oh, my God.
Davis is going to run it all the way back. Auburn's going to win the football game. Auburn's going to win the football game. He ran the missed field goal.
Welcome back, everybody. I'm Ian Fritts. It's another episode of the Ian Fritts Show. It's a big day for us here at the Ian Fritts Show. We have a microphone officially, so hopefully that audio is a little better than it has been, and hopefully it sounds pretty good for you guys. I'm excited about the microphone. So let's just jump right into it. If you clicked on this video, you know what the title is. It's the College Football Playoff Preview. The time has arrived. The College Football Playoff has arrived. It's a great time to be a college football fan, everybody. We have what is quite possibly the most anticipated semifinal matchups of the entire college football playoff era. You've got the 1 versus 4 seed in the Rose Bowl. You've got Michigan versus Alabama. You've got the 2 versus 3 seed, Washington versus Texas in the All-State Sugar Bowl. And some of you might be saying, if you've lived under a rock for the past couple weeks, some of you might be saying, Ian, whoa. You didn't even mention Florida State. What semifinal game is Florida State playing in? What semifinal game are they in? And I'm just going to have to break it to you, little Johnny. I will say, well, they didn't actually make the playoffs, little Johnny. They didn't make it in. And you might say, well, Ian, Mr. Ian, they won all their games. That means they're in the playoffs, right? That means they've made it to the playoffs. And I will say, no, little Johnny, not this year. Not this year. That didn't happen this year. If you won all your games, that doesn't mean you're in. Not this year, and not every year. We could talk circles around that forever and ever. I could have a whole podcast about that, but I'm not going to. Because I'm here to talk about what we have. And what we have are going to be 2 incredible games featuring 4 teams that have been talked about endlessly all year. They've been in the news cycle all year long, and I cannot wait for these games to happen in a week's time. Now, 2 matchups, a lot of storylines, and 2 teams that have been in the storylines recently for maybe some not good reasons. A couple teams that have been in the storylines for winning games that a lot of people think they weren't going to win. One team in the storylines for maybe stealing a playoff spot from another team. So we've got a lot of storylines with these teams, a lot of stories to talk about with these teams. And let's just go team by team. How did they get here? What were these stories talked about with these teams? What does it look like for the college football playoff games? Let's start with our number 1 seed, the Michigan Wolverines. Now, their head coach, Jim Harbaugh, didn't coach in 6 of their 13 games this year. You might be saying, well, that is wild. Why didn't he coach in 6 of their 13 games? And hopefully you know by now, but a lot of cheating going on over there in Michigan, a lot of cheating going on up there in Ann Arbor. You know, I'm not going to deny it. I'm not going to say they did it all. I'm not going to say they didn't do any of it, but I'm just here to tell you, they haven't had a head coach for 6 of their 13 games. And what did they do in those 6 games? They won them all. They won all 13 of their games. Now, what does that mean for their game going into Alabama? I'm not entirely sure, but people are trying to beat a dead horse. Michigan's cheaters. They shouldn't be in the playoffs. It doesn't matter, guys. It does not matter because they are in the playoffs. And the storylines revolving around them all year have been, if they lose a game, they're out. If they win, they're in. Even with the cheating scandal going on, it doesn't matter. What matters is they're the villain of college football right now. Everything they've done this year, everything they've done the past 3-4 years, all these cheating scandals, giving out McDonald's hamburgers to recruits, maybe giving them a little bit of money here and there, maybe go steal a couple signs here and there. Michigan is the villain of college football this year. And the funny thing is, they're going up against a team that has historically, at least the last 15 years or so, historically has been the villain of college football. The Alabama Crimson Tide. Normally, they're the villain of college football, not for cheating, not for giving hamburgers to recruits. Who knows if that's a crime or not. But Alabama's been the villain because they've been winning, and they just continue to win, and that's all they do. And nobody likes a bunch of winners, okay? Nobody likes a bunch of winners. But Michigan, they're the villain because they're a bunch of cheaters, and nobody likes cheaters. So we've kind of got a game between these 2 teams with a couple villains, and I'd say this year the bigger villain in this game, the Michigan Wolverines. Now, everyone knows those storylines for Michigan, But Alabama, what have their storylines been this entire year? They're the number 4 seed, the Alabama Crimson Tide. What were their storylines all year long? Now, every year, everybody's going to talk about Alabama. They're always talking about Alabama. Doesn't matter who their quarterback is, doesn't matter who their offensive coordinator is, doesn't matter what it looks like here, doesn't matter what it looks like over there. Alabama's always in the news cycle. And this year was no different. Now, it's not the same story with Alabama this year. It looks a little bit different. Why does it look a little bit different? Well, they struggled, and they struggled. I would say they struggled pretty mightily the first 4 or 5 weeks of the season. Now, you fast forward, or let's rewind back to the first couple weeks of the season. They win their first game. They're rolling into week 2. You've got Jalen Milroe at quarterback there. And what happens? They lose to Texas by double digits at home. They lose to Texas by double digits at home. What does that mean for their season? Well, you've got people saying it's over. This is it. This is the end of the Alabama reign. The Alabama Crimson Tide have fallen off a cliff. There is no way they're making the SEC championship game. There's no way they're making the national championship game. They're not even going to sniff the college football playoff. That's what people were saying. That's what people have been saying ever since that loss to Texas. You go a week after that, what does Alabama do? Do they shut up those haters? No, they let them keep talking because they go out there and win 17-3 against the USF Bulls. Ever since then, the talk has been this Alabama team. I don't know if they're going to be able to do it. I don't know if they're going to have the quarterback to do it. I don't know if these coaches are going to be able to make the adjustments needed for Alabama to be a championship caliber team this year. This isn't like the Nick Saban teams of old. That's what everybody's been saying. And lo and behold, you fast forward 3.5 months. What do we have here? We have the same thing we've had for the past 10, 11 years. We have Alabama in the college football playoff with a chance to win another national championship. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that all the talk at the beginning of the year was Alabama is not making college football playoff. They're not going to do it. They're not going to do it. They can't do it. It doesn't matter. We're here. We're here. Alabama, granted, are they as good as some of the Alabama teams of the past? No, but it doesn't matter. They have Nick Saban. They have a bunch of athletes on that field, and they win football games. That's all you need to do if you're Alabama. When you go in there, beat the villain. You're not usually the non-villain when you're playing a football game if you're Alabama. You're going up against the villain of college football this year. What are they going to do? Now, let's talk about another team in the playoffs right now that is in the college football playoffs. Unlike Alabama for the 8th time, you've got the Texas Longhorns making the college football playoff for the first time ever. This is a historic moment for them. Congrats to the Texas Longhorns team. Congrats to everyone over there in Austin, Texas. Big props to you guys. Now, when the college football playoffs were introduced, Texas was a shell. They were a shell of who they are right now. They were a team that was reeling. They were struggling. They weren't winning. They weren't even winning against teams that they should win against every year. They were struggling. They were in the dumps. People were kicking them while they were down. They were, that meme beating a dead horse. It's like, he's already dead, guys. That was Texas. That was Texas just 10 years ago. What happens? They have 3 or 4 coaches in there. They're not winning well. They're recruiting okay because they're Texas still, big brand, but they're not recruiting at the level they are right now. You fast forward a couple years, Steve Sarkisian walks in there. Everybody's like, this guy's not a successful head coach, never done it before. That means he can't do it. If you've never done something, that means you can't do it in the future. Not what that means, but that's what people were saying. Steve Sarkisian, they were saying he's not going to be able to win. He's never done it. Look at his track record. Look at his track record. This guy hasn't done anything successful. Boom, here we are, 5-7 the first year at Texas. People were like, hey, look at us. We were right. This is what happens. Texas is still a loser of a program. They're still beat down. You go to the last year, 8-5. Everybody's like, hey, 8-5, not great. Texas should be 10, 11 wins every year. 8-5 is not good enough for Texas. Everybody's still saying they're not back. It's not the Texas Longhorns. It's not them. And here we go. Everyone all offseason, it's the same old Texas. It's the same old Texas Longhorns. A team that's not going to win a big game. A team that's not going to go in there week 2 and beat Alabama. A team that's not going to win the Big 12 in their last year in the Big 12. They're a team that's going to go into the SEC and get steamrolled. That's what everybody was saying. It's the same old Texas Longhorns. And then you got old Steve Sarkisian down there. He's not going to last another year. This is his last year as a Texas football head coach. This is his last year. Then the Texas Longhorns stroll into Tuscaloosa in week 2, and they beat the Alabama Crimson Tide by double digits. Huge road environment, night game, nationally televised, one of the best games of the year. They roll in there and they physically dominate a team that has been the most physically dominant team the past 10, 11 years. That's what the Texas Longhorns did. Fast forward to now, they're in the college football playoff for the first time. They have a team, a quarterback, a coach that is more than capable of getting it done. And they're going up against a team that has been doubted all year. Your number 2 seed, the Washington Huskies. Now, Washington, I will give them the credit where they deserve it. They had a little bit of hype coming into the year, mainly because of Michael Penix Jr. He was one of the preseason Heisman favorites, so they had that going for them. However, nobody thought they would go 13-0, be the Pac-12 championship, be the Pac-12 champions, and roll right into the college football playoffs. Nobody thought that, and here we are, 4 months later. They're in the college football playoffs now. Everybody doubted them. Everybody doubted them all year long, even after they beat a really, really good Oregon team, a team they were underdogs to. Everybody doubted them. Even after that game, they would say, "Hey, Washington's going to lose another one," and then when they face Oregon again in the Pac-12 championship game, they're going to lose. So it doesn't really matter. Washington's just a fluke. Nobody needs to worry about the Washington Huskies. Sure, Michael Penix, he's a great talent out there. Quarterback Roma Dunze, he's a great wide receiver. Kalen DeBoer, he's a great head coach, but they're a fluky team. They're not going to win the Pac-12. They're not going to beat Oregon again. The first time was a fluke. It's not going to happen again. Fast forward through a couple of close games, barely skating by an Arizona State team that is no good. You go up there, beat Oregon State in a monsoon by a couple points. Fast forward through those games, the ups and downs of this season that was the Washington Huskies. Fast forward to the Pac-12 championship game, they're 9.5-point underdogs. There's no way Washington wins this game. There's no way. Oregon is just the way better team. They're physically dominant. They have more talent. They have a better quarterback. They have this. They have that. They have all these bells, all these whistles. And then the game happens, and you think to yourself, Washington is a better football team. Why haven't we thought that all year? Just because they had a couple bumps and bruises along the way? That's what everybody thought. That's what I thought. That's what everybody thought. Washington is now 13-0, the number 2 seed in the college football playoffs, and they have a chance to win a national championship. Nobody saw this coming. Nobody did. Everybody doubted the Washington Huskies, but they're here. Now, enough about these storylines for these teams. Enough about them. We've heard it, but I just wanted to break it down a little bit. There are some good storylines for all these teams going into the year. Everybody's been in the news this year. You got Michigan, the villains. You've got Washington, the underdogs. You got Texas, a team that, are they back? Is Texas back? And then you got the Alabama Crimson Tide, the juggernaut that continues to stick around even in what some people thought would be a down year. And here we are. The first game, the Rose Bowl, coming at you at 2:30. Great time for the Rose Bowl. Just honestly, side note, the Rose Bowl, one of the prettiest, most beautiful settings in all of college football. It's definitely on my bucket list to get there. So hopefully I can do that. Hopefully I can get there. I'm more excited to get there than I think any other stadium in the country. Enough about the stadium, enough about the setting. The spread right now is Michigan -2. I'm going to take a sip here real quick. The spread right now is Michigan -2. And I'm going to be honest with you. I was thinking about what I was going to say for this game. I was writing it down, looking at each of the matchups that I can see happening in this game. Michigan D line versus Alabama O line. How did the freshman offensive tackle Proctor? How does he stand up against this elite Michigan defensive line? How does it work? How does Nick Saban adjust to what Michigan's going to do defensively? What are they going to do offensively? And the more I thought about this, guys, the more I thought I cannot think of a way where Michigan wins this football game. I'm just going to let you sit with that for a second. I don't see a way where Michigan wins this football game. I don't. And some of you may think I'm crazy for that, and you may be right. You may be right. We'll see in a week's time, but right now, I don't see a way where Michigan can win this football game. And I'm going to tell you why. Number one reason, I don't trust JJ McCarthy. I don't trust him. I didn't trust him going into that Ohio State game, and he proved me wrong. but he didn't convince me, hey, this is a guy that can go win a national championship against an elite defense like the Alabama Crimson Tide. He didn't convince me of that. He proved me wrong, but he didn't convince me he's that guy. He didn't convince me. So I prefer Jalen Milroe over JJ McCarthy at this moment. I think Jalen Milroe's system, what he has around him, his coaches, I think all of that builds to why I prefer him. I prefer his legs over JJ McCarthy right now. Everything goes into that. I'm not all out saying Jalen Milroe is a way better quarterback than JJ McCarthy. I think he is, but I'm not saying he's worlds better than JJ. I'm just saying his situation I think is a little better offensively. I trust Alabama a little bit more than I trust Michigan offensively. So that's the number one reason. And JJ, if you look at his stats, the last half of the year he played some very, very good defenses. None like Alabama, though. Ohio State comparable, but Alabama is a different beast. He struggled mightily against those elite defenses that he faced in the latter half of the year. And Alabama, I'm telling you right now, is a different animal defensively. JJ has not seen anything like this year. Okay, so I'm worried about JJ McCarthy, number one. Number two, I don't see where Michigan will be able to run the football. Nobody's been able to run the football in Alabama all year. So if they take away the run game for Michigan, that means Michigan's going to have to throw the football. See point number one that I just outlined. But another reason why that is a worry for me for Michigan to try and win this football game is those DBs, those defensive backs for Alabama. If you watch that Georgia game, this is about, and if you're watching on podcast, just picture two pieces of paper stuck together. That's how close. That's how close the Alabama DBs and corners were against those Georgia wide receivers in the SEC championship game. They were on them like glue, guys. They were stuck to their hip the entire game. There was no separation for those guys. And I don't see any wide receivers on Michigan that are going to be able to create loads of separation against these elite DBs that Alabama has. I don't see tons of separation happening for those Michigan wide receivers. And that leads to JJ McCarthy fitting balls in tight windows, maybe making a bad decision here or there, a couple interceptions. That could happen. It is very likely that JJ McCarthy has 2 or 3 interceptions in this game. I just see it happening. I don't see Michigan running the ball well, forces Michigan to throw the football. I don't see Michigan's wide receivers getting separation from the Alabama cornerbacks. If so facto, Michigan's going to have a tough time scoring points. That's what all that means. Now, the third and final thing, I think, where Alabama has an advantage and a huge advantage is the coaching staff. I think it goes without saying Nick Saban is the greatest college football head coach of all time. Jim Harbaugh, without old Connor Stallings over there, I'm not sure what he can do. No, I'm just kidding. I think Jim Harbaugh is a good coach, but he's not a better coach than Nick Saban. I don't know if I trust him to make the adjustments. Hey, let's say Michigan, they can't run the football. What are they going to do offensively? What are they going to do schematically, in-game adjustments to try and score some points? Is it a reverse pass? Is it a trick play here or there? Is it a flea flicker? What are we going to do to make Alabama be on their heels? I don't know if I trust Jim Harbaugh and that coaching staff over there to outsmart and outcoach the coaching staff that Nick Saban has assembled. The adjustments the Alabama coaching staff has made the entire year lends me to believe they have a very big advantage over the Michigan coaching staff. So we've got JJ McCarthy. I don't trust him yet. We've got the wide receivers for Michigan. I don't think they're going to create a lot of separation. And we've got Michigan's coaching staff. I don't think it's as good as Alabama's coaching staff. Those are my three main reasons. And with all three of those reasons, I don't see a way Michigan wins this football game. I don't see it happening. I don't see a way it can happen. Now, with all that being said, you already know who I think is going to win this football game. Michigan. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Well, imagine I say all that and I say Michigan's going to win. That would make no sense. And that's why I'm saying Alabama's going to win this football game. They're the underdog somehow, -2. Maybe it's not really an underdog, you could say, but they're the point spread underdog. But I think Alabama wins this football game. Obviously, I think they cover the spread if I think they win, but I think they win this football game by double digits. I think they win by 10 to 14 points, somewhere in there. I'm still going to watch all of this football game. I think it's going to be very, very entertaining. But I think Alabama maybe pulls away late and push Michigan to sleep, and we can finally get rid of this coaching scandal. It doesn't really matter. Who cares? Who cares about this cheating scandal anymore? Michigan's not going to win the national championship, so it doesn't really matter. And then we have Alabama competing for what seems like their 100th national championship in the last 10 years. Now, who do I think is going to face Alabama in the national championship? Well, it's got to be Washington or Texas. Let's jump right into it. Got to take a sip first, though. Okay, Washington versus Texas, the Sugar Bowl. If you know anything about geography, about locations, Washington is up here in the United States. Texas is right about here, and then you've got the Sugar Bowl right about here. Now, I'm no I'm no genius. I'm no geography master, but I'm just going to throw it out there that I think there's going to be more Texas fans at this football game than I do Washington fans. Washington's got to go from here all the way over to here. Texas got to go from here to here. Okay, so number one advantage, I think it's going to be more of a road environment for the Washington Huskies. Now, I'm not going to say that I know how well the Washington Huskies travel, but that's a long ways to go. That's a lot of money they got to spend. That's a lot of time and effort they got to spend to get down there. Texas, you just hop in the car for a little 8-hour drive, you're there. Boom, you're done. You can be back and home in the same day. Washington, that cannot happen for you. So, unfortunately for Washington, I think it's going to be more of a road environment for them. Advantage Texas. Now, what I'm about to say could be maybe the most controversial thing I have ever said on this podcast, on this YouTube show. I think this has the makings for the best playoff game of all time. I'm going to say that again. I think this has the makings for the best playoff game of all time. Currently, I think it is a popular opinion to think the 2018 Rose Bowl with Baker Mayfield and the Oklahoma Sooners versus Jake Fromm and the Georgia Bulldogs. I think it's pretty popular to think that is the best playoff game we have ever witnessed. And I'm right in that boat. I think that is the greatest college football game I've ever watched. So, how is this Texas versus Washington going to beat an OU versus Georgia game from 5 years ago? How is it going to be a better football game than that one? There's no way. There's no way. Well, here's why I think it could be. And here are the matchups that I'm going to be glued to my TV watching. Okay. Number one, you've got the Washington wide receivers versus the Texas defensive backs. Okay. Everybody knows them. Everybody loves them. Roma Dunze, McMillan, Polk. Three absolute stud wide receivers for the Washington Huskies. They have the best wide receiver core in all of college football. I don't think it's very close. Texas has they have some nice guys, but Washington, three absolute NFL guys, no doubt about it. Three guys that could go into the NFL right now and play and make some plays for some big time teams. Mainly Roma Dunze. Okay. And then you got to look at Michael Penix Jr., Heisman finalist. Dude I think he has a funky release. Maybe it's just because he's left-handed, but I think it looks kind of funky and it looks kind of weird. Doesn't really matter because he makes big throws in moments where people doubt him. Think both Oregon games. Think up there in Oregon State in the rain. Dude makes plays when it matters, and he knows how to get the ball to his best players. Now, why do I think this matchup with those Washington wide receivers versus Texas defensive backs is so important to this game? Well, number one, the receivers for Washington, they have been able to do whatever they want all year long. It doesn't matter who they're facing, it doesn't matter who they're going up against. They have been able to get theirs every single game. Also, all three of those guys, including their quarterback, Michael Penix, all three of those receivers have played a lot of football. And I mean a lot of football. Those are three very experienced veteran receivers for Washington and a very veteran 26-year-old quarterback in Michael Penix Jr., okay? There's a lot of experience on that Washington offense. And I trust that experience more than I trust the Texas inexperience on the back end of their defense, okay? Texas has a couple freshman defensive backs back there. They're nice players. They're solid, solid players. However, they haven't played nearly as much football as those Washington wide receivers. And I'm worried about the mental breakdowns, the mental mistakes that those cornerbacks and safeties could have in this game. So one thing I'm looking at is coverages. How are they going to cover all three of these stud guys out there? What is it going to look like? Are they going to double team Roma Dunze? Probably not, because you've got to worry about Polk and McMillan on the other side. What are they going to do? How do these freshman DBs respond for Texas? And then what does Michael Penix do? How do they confuse them? How do they confuse those Texas defensive backs and make it look like they're freshmen out there? Because they've been playing like some very good players, not really looking like freshmen, but this is the biggest stage of their career, biggest stage of their life so far. And how do they respond? How do they respond? The other matchup that I'm just can't wait to watch is the same thing that I just mentioned, but for the opposite team. So you've got the Washington DBs versus the Texas wide receivers and tight ends. Now, why am I intrigued by the same thing? Well, just like Texas struggles in the pass defense, Washington struggles in the pass defense. In Texas, just like the Washington wide receivers, they have a lot of experience on the outside. You got Xavier Worthy, A.D. Mitchell, J.T. Sanders. What I think maybe is like the oldest guy in all of college football, but he's only a fifth year, is Elijah Whittington. That guy seems like he's been playing college football for about a decade, but only his fifth year. So Texas has a lot of experience on the outside, just like Washington. But Washington's DBs, they've struggled. I believe they're 123rd in pass yards per game allowed defensively. And if I'm Texas, I look at that number and I think, I like our chances throwing the football against this team. I like our chances throwing the football against this team. If you've watched any of Washington's film, if you've watched any of their games, a theme, something that just happens over and over again, maybe once a drive, a couple times a drive, there's always a guy running wide open for the opposing offense. Okay. There's always a guy just streaking down the middle of the field, maybe going down the outside on a wheel route or something. There's always a guy wide open against that Washington secondary. I don't know why that happens, but it's just part of who the Washington Huskies are right now. I go back to that Oregon Pac-12 championship game when they go up by 17 or whatever it was with like 8 minutes left, and you're like, well, the game's over. And then, sure enough, Bo Nix finds a guy wide open in the middle of the field, and he runs down there for like 85-yard touchdown. Okay, they're right back in the game. I don't know why it happens. I'm just telling you that it does happen, and I expect to see it again. I expect to see A.D. Mitchell, Xavier Worthy, a lot of that speed they have on the outside. I expect to see those guys running free in the middle of the field, and I think Quinn Ewers is going to be able to find them. He's going to be able to put the ball in a place for them to make a play. So those are the matchups I'm excited to see. I'm excited to see those matchups, and those matchups, what I just laid out, I think that entails a lot of points. I think we're going to have a shootout here in the Sugar Bowl. I love a shootout. Everybody loves offense. I think that's what we're going to get ourselves in this All State Sugar Bowl. And that's why I think this game has all the makings for an all time great, what I think is going to be the best college football playoff game we've ever witnessed because of all these receivers, all the talent on the offensive sides of the ball for these football teams. It's going to be incredible to watch. Now, enough about the receivers, enough about the talent offensively. Who do I think is going to win this football game? Who is going to win the All State Sugar Bowl? What team's going to do it? Who's going to do it? Well, the more I thought about this game, the more I thought Washington's a 4.5 point dog. Again, who who keeps making these lines? Washington's always an underdog against a team that maybe is the same caliber as them. And I didn't go with it. I picked them to win the Pac-12 championship game, and it worked out for me. I'm doing the same thing here, guys. Somehow, some way, the Huskies just find a way to win. I don't know what it is. I don't know what they do, but I think they're going to do the same thing here. Somehow, some way, Roma Dunze, Michael Penix Jr., Jalen Polk, they're going to find a way to win this football game, and it's going to be entertaining. Okay? Maybe they do it on the last second 45-yard touchdown pass. I don't know. But all I know is when the game is on the line and Michael Penix Jr. has the ball in his hands, he finds a way to make a play and get the ball to his best players. And I think that is going to happen. And that's why I'm thinking Washington is going to win this football game. They're covering the spread, and we're going to have Alabama Crimson Tide versus the Washington Huskies in the national championship game in 3 weeks' time. So hopefully those predictions come true, because I think the Alabama versus Washington national championship game will be just must watch TV. Honestly, I think all the matchups we can get will be must watch TV, but I'm very excited to hopefully get Alabama versus Washington. Those are the picks. Alabama beating Michigan in the Rose Bowl, and Washington beating Texas in the All-State Sugar Bowl. Thank you guys for watching. Hopefully the audio sounds good with the new microphone. Subscribe, follow that Spotify. Get over on, I'm on TikTok now, so we'll clip some of this and put it out on TikTok. So thank you guys for watching. I appreciate it, and I'll see you with the college football playoff semifinal games recap next week. Thank you guys for watching. I love you guys. Bye.
Well, he has trouble with the snap, and the ball is free. It's picked up by Michigan State's Jalen Jackson, and he scores on the last play of the game. Unbelievable.
35, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50, 45. There goes